The physical war against the so-called Islamic State is over. At the height of the conflict, an estimated 40,000 people traveled from all over the world to join the terrorist group in Syria and Iraq, where it had captured swaths of territory. Most came from Arab states like Tunisia, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Jordan, but thousands also came from Russia and former Soviet states, as well as from countries in Western Europe like France, the United Kingdom, Germany, and Belgium. A few hundred came from Canada and the United States too. But with the group pushed out of territory where it once sought to establish its caliphate, those people now have to find somewhere else to go, and many want to return home. This poses a difficult question to governments around the world. What do we do with them?
As of October, an estimated 5,600 ISIS fighters returned to their countries of origin, most to Saudi Arabia, but hundreds to Europe, including approximately 425 in the United Kingdom. In Canada, for almost 2 years now, CSIS, the country spy agency, has told the public that it's aware of approximately 190 Canadians who have traveled abroad to support extremist causes, or what the government calls extremist travelers. Nearly half of those people went to Turkey, Iraq, and Syria. The government claims that about 60 extremists have returned to Canada, but it's important to point out that not all those returnees have come back from former ISIS territory.
So I don't think there is any accurate number presently available as to how many have actually returned from that conflict in Canada.
Lauren Dawson leads a small team of researchers who have interviewed dozens of foreign fighters in Iraq and Syria over social media. His research focuses on what motivates people to join extremist groups, but he and his team have also kept tabs on who's traveled where.
Through our networks of contacts connected with the research we've been doing for a number of years, we can now identify 17 individuals that might be identified as returnees. That could be part of that 60. Even 17 individuals, people need to understand that that includes at least 8 individuals who never really actually made it into Syria or Iraq or engaged in any fighting or joined the terrorist groups. They're individuals who left from Canada with the intention of doing that, but were intercepted in places like Turkey or Egypt and turned back to Canada.
It's safe to assume the RCMP is actively investigating some, if not all, of these returnees for potential criminal charges. But building a criminal case against these people is much easier said than done. The fact that a person went overseas is not enough. The Crown must prove that the person joined ISIS for, according to the criminal code, the purpose of enhancing the ability of any terrorist group to facilitate or carry out a terrorist activity. In Canada, to successfully prosecute someone on terrorism charges, not only do you have to provide evidence to prove the subject committed the act, you also have to prove that the person acted for a political, religious, or ideological purpose, objective, or cause. Essentially, you have to provide the evidence of the suspect's motivation, which adds another layer of complexity to the trial. And if the suspect is returning from a conflict abroad, it will likely be a challenge to gather incriminating evidence to prove not only what they did, but their motive for doing so. The Crown can also pursue so-called peace bonds, placing bail-like conditions on an individual because there is, quote, reasonable fear that that person may engage in a terrorism offense. If a judge approves, that person has to live with a surety, for example, stay off the internet, stay away from fellow extremists, and abide by a curfew. But this strategy isn't foolproof either, as we learned all too well with the Aaron Driver case.
The RCMP has said that ISIS sympathizer Aaron Driver was in the final stages of planning a terrorist attack in a so-called urban center.
Most Canadians want to see returnees prosecuted and thrown in jail. And while that's symbolic, it's only a temporary fix. Canada's prison system has no programs in place to work with people who have become radicalized, so you run the risk of those people emerging from prison the same way they went in. While media and academics have focused mostly on how people become radicalized, what experts call de-radicalization is a much more mystifying challenge. Many Western countries that saw their civilians travel to Syria or Iraq have set up rehabilitation programs. Programs have also been established in the Middle East and in Southeast Asia. Experts argue that these programs work towards a long-term goal of eradicating violent extremism. There's even a UN Security Council resolution from 2014 that calls on states to develop rehabilitation and reintegration strategies. The problem is, no one has really figured out what works, and what works in, say, Germany may not work in Canada. People join extremist groups for different reasons. So naturally, what causes them to distance themselves differs too.
One program widely regarded as a success is in Denmark. The Danes have been at the forefront of developing strategies of rehabilitating and reintegrating returnees. This program is built on the concept of inclusion and reintegration into society. Participants receive a risk assessment by a panel of experts that identifies their motivation for taking part in the program and possible trauma. They receive counseling and a mentor. It facilitates discussions around political or religious issues, offers access to health care, assistance getting back into education, finding employment or housing. And while the concept seems surprisingly straightforward, people from all over the world come to view this program to see what makes it unique and what makes it work. Of the 33 residents known to have left Syria or Iraq, 16 have returned and went through the program. None have committed any serious crimes, and most are now employed or re-enrolled in education.
There will be individuals we have to be seriously worried about, and nobody's saying we shouldn't be seeking to find out who those individuals are. But the majority, all good scholarship agrees, the majority of people who return will probably mainly fit into the camp of what we'd call the disillusioned. You got to think even just commonsensically. These are individuals returning, we'll be specific here, to Canada, knowing full well that they're going to be monitored, the government's going to be aware of them, and that there'll be a quite significant effort to prosecute them, and that they are facing the potential of life in prison when they return. Yet they're choosing to return anyways.
Dawson says these people already have what's called a cognitive opening, a moment when you become receptive to new ideas and worldviews. This is why he thinks the success of rehabilitation programs will be much higher than most people expect.
Canada lags behind other countries in this area. We have one program operating in Montreal and another in Calgary that was established by the police department there. The Toronto police have also begun to put resources towards counter-radicalization. The federal government's long-awaited Centre for Community Engagement and Prevention of Violence, which was launched in mid-2017, funds programs like these and other research projects on violent extremism. The Liberals have invested $35 million over 5 years for the centre, but problems do remain. The government is yet to fill the special advisor position. The person will be charged with developing a national strategy to counter radicalization. The other issue is that most of the programs up and running in Canada take a preventative approach to countering radicalization. While this is crucial, we still have virtually no programming specifically tailored to individuals that are returning from conflict zones.
Having eyes on returnees seems like a no-brainer, but even if CSIS wanted to surveil every so-called extremist traveler, it likely won't. It'll be more concerned with identifying the ones who pose the greatest threat. It takes anywhere between 20 and 40 people to put someone under surveillance. Not cheap, and of course, by no means foolproof.
And let's say the government number were actually accurate in some way to take the extreme upper limit numbers, 60. Can't possibly surveil 60 people around the clock. And the question is, for how long would you do it? You can't keep people under surveillance indefinitely.
All of these tactics are part of a larger counterterrorism toolkit that governments have at their disposal. Policymakers have to strike a tough balance because, as one terrorism scholar put it, underestimating the threat is dangerous and overestimation is expensive.